When we step into the mind of Edgar Allan Poe, we expect darkness. But true darkness is rarely just the absence of light. It is a careful orchestration of tone, shadow, and tint. In his 1839 masterpiece, The Fall of the House of Usher, Poe builds a world that initially feels entirely drained of color. The narrator arrives on a dull, dark, and soundless day, greeted by a landscape that feels fundamentally wrong. But if you look closer at the canvas Poe is painting, you realize that the House of Usher isn't colorless. It is trapped in a highly specific, suffocating palette. Today on Shadow Half Hues, we are peering through the decaying looking glass to analyze the 4 distinct color motifs, the hidden hues, that map the psychological and physical ruin of the Usher bloodline. Our first hue is the oppressive, omnipresent gray, or what Poe refers to as leaden-hued and ghastly. Gray is the color of the physical mansion, the vapor that surrounds the property, and the very skin of Friedrich Usher himself. In traditional color theory, gray represents neutrality and balance. But in the Gothic tradition, Poe weaponizes gray to symbolize stagnation and the erasure of life. The stones of the house are individual blocks of decay, held together by an unnatural web of fungi. Roderick's complexion is described as cadaverous, a gray, parchment-like skin that has forgotten the sun. This leaden palette immediately tells the viewer that nothing within this perimeter is allowed to change, evolve, or heal. The color gray is a temporal trap. It is the shade of a world caught perpetually between life and death. Against this oppressive gray, Poe introduces a terrifying counterpoint, an unnatural, luminous white and gold radiance. When the narrator first approaches, he notes the vacant, eye-like windows of the house. Later we meet Roderick, whose eyes possess a luminous and liquid luster. This isn't the warm light of vitality, it is the erratic glow of hypersensory mania. Roderick suffers from a morbid acuteness of the senses. Light tortures him, yet he and his environment radiate a ghostly sheen. Think of the poem embedded in the text, The Haunted Palace, which describes a monarch's mind. It explicitly contrasts the radiant golden banners of the past with the dim, chaotic present. When Roderick paints, he creates a subterranean vault, illuminated by no ray from without, yet bathed in an intense, artificial light. This luminous hue represents unregulated intellect and madness. It is the light of a mind burning itself alive from the inside out, completely detached from the natural world. For the structural half of the story, the primary colors are cerebral, the gray of the body, and the eerie white-gold light of the mind. But Poe saves his most violent hue for the terrifying climax, crimson. While Roderick represents the mind, his twin sister Madeline represents the physical, corporeal body. When she escapes her premature burial and stands at the door, her white robes are heavily stained with the deep red of her violent struggle. But Poe doesn't stop there. As the narrator flees into the midnight storm, the clouds part to reveal a blood-red moon shining directly through the widening fissure of the house. Crimson here acts as the ultimate catalyst. It is the color of inherited guilt, biology, and inescapable reality. The red moon and the bloody robes shatter the pale, drug-like illusion of Roderick's world. The physical bloodline claims its final, violent tax, collapsing the house into the earth. Finally, surrounding the entire narrative is the absolute blackness of the Tarn, the stagnant dark lake that rings the estate. The Tarn acts as a literal mirror. When the narrator first arrives, he looks down into the water and sees a perfect, inverted reflection of the decaying house. In color psychology, black represents finality, the unconscious, and the void. By framing the story with this inky black lake, Poe is telling us that the fate of the Ushers was sealed long before the narrator arrived. The reflection in the black water symbolizes the psychological trap of the subconscious. You cannot run from your reflection, and you cannot run from your shadow. When the house splits, it doesn't just fall. It is swallowed entirely by the deep, dark, silent black waters of oblivion. Edgar Allan Poe did not write stories, he painted psychological landscapes. By tracking the shift from leaden gray to manic gold, and finally to blood red and absolute black, we see that The Fall of the House of Usher is a masterclass in Gothic color theory. The next time you open a classic Gothic tale, don't just read the words, look for the hues hiding in the shadows. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the color palette of classic terror, turn up your hearth, hit that subscribe button, and join us next time in the shadows. Until then, keep looking for the color in the dark.